500, 500 people.
How many?
Wow.
Oh, 500.
Oh, I heard there were 1,000.
I wouldn't be surprised because, I couldn't really tell for sure. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna begin now. I hope
Okay.
you had a great
Sorry.
session.
We're just talking amongst ourselves.
Okay, I know. Well, 9:01, I mean, it's 10:01, right?
Yeah.
So it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker today for Sunday Morning Zen. Kunaka Pearl Ratunil is speaking about writing when you're stuck. And she's going to be facilitating, teaching the writing workshop that will start on the 22nd of March. So Kunaka's been a friend and member of the center for a long time, and also a member of the Korean Zen Temple in Chicago, which she'll be talking about today. She teaches at Harper College, and we're just really happy that she is going to be leading this workshop for 10 people. And as you said, one more slot is available. So with that, take it away, Kunaka.
Thank you. It's so strange to be on the virtual side of this, but I'm delighted to be here. I want to thank June for this. I'm here because June had a dream. June had a dream in June. I was at a writer's residency in Hedgebrook working on a memoir about living at a Zen Buddhist temple on the north side of Chicago. And I had spent 3 weeks in Whidbey Island at this residency trying to write about my life at a Zen temple. And it's been a long journey to write this book. On the way back, I was on the ferry coming from Whidbey Island to the mainland, and I got an email from June. And June wrote to me and she said, I had a dream that you were teaching a workshop, but I didn't register in time and I felt really bad about it. And I said, well, I said, and she said, you had published a book and you were teaching and I wished I had registered. And then the next thing I know, we're manifesting it in real life. So when your sensei has a dream, just roll with it. So that's kind of why I'm here. I think the thing I want to do here is there's two things. One, we're having this workshop for 6 weeks and 2 weeks. So I wanted to introduce myself to you. I've been a member since 2010. I was on the board a decade ago at the Zen Center, and I live in Crystal Lake now, so I'm not there often. I'm going to read the first chapter of the book that I'm working on because I want to give you a sense of what this thing is that I've been writing. And then I want to spend a little bit of time talking about how all this practice we do liberates us from some of the limitations to our creativity. So I'm going to just read the first few pages of this book. It's called The Buddha Test, and it's a memoir about living at the Zen Buddhist temple in Chicago. So we'll start there, and then I'll talk a little bit about the journey. So this is chapter 1, Wake Up. Talk, 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 talk. A wooden mallet strikes a wooden fish-shaped muktuk. 3 hollow strikes. Tuck, tuck, tuck. Then the Zen priest's voice in the distance. The chant begins in Sanskrit. Shin myo jangu te darani namo radha nada rayaya. The priest strikes the muktuk, keeping time with the chant. Tuck, tuck, tuck. The melody and the hollow wooden sound lift my consciousness from its dreamless watch, and I open my eyes. The knocking is louder now. Tuck, tuck, tuck. Toro doro mionji. I listen but do not move. I can tell by the sound of the muktuk where she is in the building. When it's faint, she's upstairs, walking the old retreat center where Sunim once led 2-week retreats. The floor of the retreat hall would have been lined with cushions. Meditators would sleep and eat on the same cushion. It would lay flat for sleeping and then folded into thirds to become the meditators' cushions, where each person would sit minute by minute, watching, breathing, sleeping, waking, watching, breathing, sleeping. In my mind, I see the priest's petite frame shrouded in the folds of our gray meditation robes. Her light brown hair is cut in a short pixie. She's in her early 40s, but she looks younger, and I see her walk down that old, empty retreat hall, filled with the belongings of long departed residents. Bits of furniture, lamps, stacks of futons, rows of space heaters, everything covered with a dusty film. Tuck, tuck, tuck. It's getting louder. She's come down the back stairs to the third floor, and she's in the hallway next to my room. As she walks away, the tuck, tuck of the mallet becomes fainter, and I cannot hear the chant at all. August daylight peeks beneath the curtains of the window. I breathe in and out. Then again. The breath is soft and consistent. My mind begins to think its thoughts. I will have to get up. I will have to face people. I will have to meditate, although this is all right with me. Then breakfast with others, a dreading begins. Then dress. Then find my car outside the temple. Then drive to campus. Then teach, unbearable thought. Then try to make coherent marks on papers. Then endure to the end of the day. Then get in the car. Then eat at a grocery store salad bar. Then drive back to temple. Then park the car. Then unlock the temple door, then remove my shoes, then leave them carefully side by side on the shelf, then pull on the door to make sure it's locked behind me, then walk through the temple, stop at the altar, and drop to my knees 3 times. Then bow from the waist, palms together, then walk to the back door, slip my feet into outdoor slippers, open the door, walk across the back deck, unlock my room door, step in and drop my purse and book bag, peel off my clothes, put on my pajamas, lie down on the futon where I already am, and return to a dreamless watch. I see the whole day pass before my eyes and see that its ending is exactly the same as the beginning. I will return to the moment I'm in right now. What's the point then? Why get up at all? I pull the covers over my head, recede back down into the hole made by my body in the mattress. I hear the priest complete the chant in the Buddha hall next to my room. Namakaya Parokije Sebaraya Sabaha. The final Sabaha has a pause and a double strike. Tuck, tuck. Her voice fades as she bows low from the waist. A final tuck. Silence. The empty space of the silence is large and luminous, and from deep inside of the hole of the mattress, I feel the grip of my mind release. There's something about that silent space just after the chant ends that motivates me. I can't say what it is, but once it's over, the world feels urgent. You must go out there, you must live. I hurl the covers off me, push myself from the futon, and stand upright. For a moment, I feel unsteady. I grab the gray meditation robes from their hook, take off the pajamas, and slide into the gray pants and jacket of a Korean monastic. I rush to the heavy steel door of my room and push on it until I find myself on the back deck of the temple. I'm outside and confused. Green trees, sunlight sparkles along the edges of the leaves where the dew catches the light. I breathe. The air is crisp and sweet. The sky is blue. I turn to my left and walk quickly back to the back door of the temple, place my key in the lock, and enter the building where the priest waits for me at the altar, her hands held palm to palm. So, um, that is the first chapter of this book I've been working on. I want to talk a little bit about that journey to write. It took 10 years to write 10 pages. And I want to talk about 10 years and 10 pages because every part of that has to do with this practice that we do together. When like a lot of people who want to be artists or creatives, I wanted to do that ever since I was a child. But my parents, who are Filipino immigrants and came here with very specific reasons, actually forbade me from becoming a writer. So when I was 17 or 18 and went to declare a major and said I wanted to be a writer and major in English, they basically forbade me from doing it. And so I ended up on a journey to reclaim this impulse, and it took many, many decades. And so one of the uh, things I wanted to talk about after reading that was to talk about how this simple practice that we do of breathing and noticing where we are in space and noticing our thoughts is really profound and liberating. And the release of being able to write after decades of not and also being prohibited from it was profound and transformative. So, part of the journey of the temple in this creative process is when I discovered meditating in the temple. So I'd meditated before, but when I get to meditate in the temple, something else happened. And when I went to study Zen, something else happened. So I want to talk about Zen in particular. Um, I was languishing in a graduate program at the University of Illinois at Chicago, and I was getting letters from the graduate college that says if you don't finish this dissertation, you're not getting one. And so I was getting nasty grams from them. And I had given up. I thought this is never going to happen because I can't write. So I had managed to finish my master's, and I thought, well, I've got a teaching job at a community college, and I was ready to walk away from this doctoral program. And there's a couple of personal tragedies that happened at the same time, which also made it hard to write. So I talk about that more in the book. Um, and then in a sort of a last attempt at something. It's kind of strange what brings you to a temple. At least for me, it was just a weird impulse, not even an impulse, kind of gravitational pull. I went to take an introduction to meditation course at his local Zen temple. And the first time I walked to the temple and someone taught me how to put my hands palm to palm, something shifted inside of me. And it just started with that. This little practice, just this. And I sometimes do this now before I write. I just do this to prepare to write. And when the teacher, Sunha, taught this, we called it hapchang in Korean, something shifted. And so I went to a 6 weeks meditation course and I started doing a practice. And I was still going to be tossed out of my graduate program. And then 3 months before I was going to get tossed out because I hadn't finished a dissertation, I started going to the temple every morning for morning practice. And every morning for morning practice, I would do 108 prostrations with the priest, sit for 25 minutes, and chant for 25 minutes. And I did it every morning and starting in May until August. And in the space of 3 months, I wrote the rest of the dissertation and defended it in 3 months. So by August, I'm standing there with a piece of paper from the graduate college that says, congratulations, you've successfully completed the requirements to a doctorate. And I'm standing around going, what the hell? how did how did that happen? And the only thing that had changed in my life is I went to this temple every day and 5 or 6 days a week and I practiced. And I'm standing there with a doctorate thinking, I don't, what is this thing? What is this thing that I did that made this impossible thing possible? So that little bit, that transformative moment of going from not an impossibility to a possibility was part of my experience of this practice. As I went into my academic career, I started to help young writers, freshman writers who struggled in the same way. And I started to teach mindfulness meditation in my classrooms because I saw the same thing in them that was occurring in me. And so I would then started teaching it there. But despite being able to get this doctorate and doing a little bit of academic publishing, there was this deeper creative need to write something that was more personal and creative. But I was still struggling with the prohibition from my childhood that I shouldn't become a writer and that I mustn't become a writer, and I can't. And so finally, at the age of 53 years old, I had a hip replacement. Thank God for hip replacements, man. That's another transformative experience. If you haven't had one yet, uh, the I was still reached a point in my life where I wasn't writing the thing that I knew I needed to write and wanted to write, and I had to have a hip replacement, and I knew I would be in bed for 6 weeks. So I got a book that's very transformative for a lot of people, which is The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And it's a 6 week course. And I've tried it numerous times over the years, and I'd get to lesson one and I'd stop doing it. And I'd think it was stupid. And so I tried it and tried it and tried it. And then when I had the hip replacement done a few years ago, I sat down with it and the workbook, and then from the bed while I was recuperating, I did every exercise as faithfully as I could. And one of the things that the Zen training helped me do was be able to bring the meditation practice to the writing practice. When I do the meditation practice, the writing practice can come. When I don't do the meditation practice, the writing practice gets stuck in the thoughts that say that I can't write. So the space, and in the book I write about this in the first chapter, that silence, that luminous space that's created by the practice allows that those limitations to fall away so that that creative impulse can come through. So when I was recuperating, I did all the exercises and I incorporated the practice, meditation and Zen practice with the contemplative, with the creative practice so that I could start writing. And it was very gradual. And this is the part too that I learned from Zen is to appreciate just one breath. When I would write and I would only write a sentence, I would feel defeated because I had some goal in my mind. I should write 7 pages today. But when I started to embrace the training from Zen, I realized one word was enough. 2 sentences is enough. 1 breath is enough. So it's the 1 breath and to go 1 breath at a time. So I really had to lean into the attention, the cultivation of attention through this training. That's just do 1 breath, do 1 breath, and then do 1 word and do 1 sentence. So gradually over the weeks, I went from 1 word to 1 sentence to finally the 3 pages a day that Julia Cameron writes about in her book called Morning Pages, where you write 3 pages every morning. And as that practice, it's kind of like the meditation practice. The longer I could do 5 minutes, then I could do 10 minutes, and then I could do 20 minutes. And then I was writing more consistently every day. I want to talk to you about how powerful it is to be able to do a thing in your life that you've never been able to do. If there's this one thing you think about dreaming about, whether it's saving the climate or planting trees or doing painting or doing art or creating a business, it can seem enormous and impossible and hard and lonely. And so when the practice I started to turn into my practice in Zen training, the I was able to break this very large thing into something small, into what I can do every day in a moment, in a few minutes. And then it sort of manifests gradually and it's on its own. And that it becomes itself. And I had to learn to get out of the way of it, particularly with a mind that says, I want to be liked through writing, or I want approval, or I want success, or I want money. And so those thoughts also get in the way of being able to make anything. When I finished the hip replacement and I could walk again, um, one of the things that Julia Cameron has people do in her book is to start to submit work out there, to put yourself out there. So I did one of the exercises where I submitted to a residency. And I'm not an experienced writer or a very widely published writer. So I just did it as an exercise. And when I submitted, my goal was to experience rejection, because rejection was probably the hardest part of being creative that I struggled with, because when I felt rejected, I felt defeated and then I would stop writing. So I wanted to go through the process of experiencing rejection and surviving it, being resilient to it. And that was going to be really challenging for me, because I felt defeated as a writer from the very beginning. And so I submitted to a residency that a friend had said, oh, you should apply to this residency. Well, the success rate of this residency was 3,000 applications and 40 spots. So I thought, perfect, I'll never get in. I'll get to practice being rejected, and then that'll be the thing. I'm going to practice rejection, and I'm going to practice rejection and writing, like get rejected and keep writing. And so I submit in February, and I'm waiting around for my rejection. Spring comes, July comes, and I'm like, well, where's my rejection? I got to practice this whole resilient thing. And then in August, I get an email that says, congratulations, you've been awarded a residency. And I was slightly disappointed, because I was like, wait a second. My program here was to experience rejection so I could have resiliency. So I'm like, well, now what? And I was shocked to get a slot out of so many thousands of writers who apply. Uh, and I think that the next journey then was to be able to receive that permission, because I had been not given permission to write. So the validation of the residency was sort of helped to overcome some of the prohibitions about writing. And so I was able to go to the residency and struggled with the whole ego about I don't deserve it. They made a mistake. I'm not supposed to be here. And so that was still more practice. And the funny thing about this residency, it's a lot like being in a temple. I was in a woods in a cottage by myself for 3 weeks. So basically, I had to go back into my training and use the practice and keep a consistent schedules in order to stay focused on writing. And I wrote a little and I wrote some, but it was the residency, I think, helped me settle into more of the reality of writing and staying in the practice of it. I think that um, one of the challenges of the creative impulses when there's limitations placed on it is to have a consistent practice that frees a meditation practice, a contemplative practice. And I mean, like everything from meditation to yoga to Tai Chi to art, contemplative practices that bring us into the present. All of these things create space so that this energy can mm, create and create through us. Um, when I finished the residency, I came back and I was so focused on wanting to get the book done that I ended up writing myself straight into an illness, which is learning more about, how to respect the body and and honoring your practice and the craft and learning to be in present with it instead of driving it to make something. I think that still continues to be a trap for me. I titled the talk from Trungpa's famous line that enlightenment is like stepping off a cliff. The good news is there's no ground. And I titled it that talk because writing this book over a period of a decade felt like falling and falling and accepting that there's no there's no ground. There's just falling and feeling the fall and then feeling the flying and feeling the limitlessness of space. I think the metaphor of Trungpa brings is that space, that falling is a mindset. It can be flying, it can be floating, it can be spaciousness, it can be liberation, it can be openness, it can be heartedness, generosity. And so finding that spaciousness and openness and accessibility in the fall is where I think the energy comes to be able to make things. The second quotation I want to bring to end this about writing is from Annie Lamott, who writes about in Bird by Bird. She writes, "My mind is like a bad neighborhood. I try not to go there alone." So when I think about this workshop, there's two things. It's falling, not alone. So Trungpa, writing and falling, but you don't have to do it by yourself. So what I've learned by being with a community of writers and artists, when the friends that I have and the people who are supportive, is that you can make this fall with someone, and then you can enjoy this floating spaciousness together and create together. So one of the hopes for this workshop is to create a space for writers or creatives or people who feel that they want a space to be explore creativity and bring your practice to it and be in community is a really powerful admixture of circumstance to support creative endeavors. Um, and so those are the two quotations that I wanted to bring together to talk about the workshop that we're going to be having in 2 weeks. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I'm getting over a virus, so I told June it's going to have to be short in case I lose my voice. So June, I don't know if there's Q&A or...
Yeah, Q&A for sure. So if anybody has any questions or thoughts about the presentation or the workshop, feel free. If you're online, just unmute and you can start talking.
Nobody has a question. I have one.
Of course.
Okay, here you go.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you. Yeah, I really like what you had to say, Pearl. I think, so I dabble in some writing. I have found that some of the things you said have been very helpful for me. No doubt that my practice has really been helpful. It unencumbers me. It unencumbers my mind. But I think one of the things that really has been helpful for me is not to get in front of myself, to get in my own way. So right now I'm doing a practice where each week I write a 400-word short story.
What?
You know those, they're great. The prompt comes from somebody that I follow online. I have no idea what's going to happen. I just sit down and just let it happen. But before I started realizing that that was part of my practice, I couldn't do it. I could not do it. I couldn't get myself to write. I couldn't get myself to write a poem. And now, and very much some of the things that you said have enabled it.
Yeah. What do you think got in the way of you being able to write?
Oh, just trying to decide ahead of time what I was going to write.
Yeah.
You know? So when I write, I just sit down and a word starts, which
Yeah.
comes from nowhere. And then whatever follows, follows.
Yeah. It isn't it. I think what's nice about that is that when the writing is feeling good for me, it also feels like meditation practice. When the breath is coming on its own, and that moment when you're watching the breath just come on its own, you can observe it, and it's not effort. That's when writing feels very much the same as the meditation practice. And then that's also when it feels very healing and not something I'm striving to do. I think if you're an academic, one of the challenges about writing is that it was very product. It's been very product oriented. I had to achieve something with writing, and it made it hard to appreciate it as a place to be present rather than a place to achieve. And that's been a real journey to try to be in writing as a not competitive space. That's been hard. And so I think the meditation training and Zen in particular, Zen, there's something about Zen in particular, and it's hard it's hard to say what it is, but there's something also about Zen in particular that's helped not just Buddhism, but Zen and how Zen approaches things that makes it also easier to get into that space. And the way Zen conceives of practice has been very helpful for me.
I wanted to say, when you described your first meeting at the temple and the priest showing you just how to put your palms together, I found incredibly moving.
Mm.
Just for the simplicity of it, and there was something about that gesture that just kind of opened my heart.
Oh, wow. Thank
And
you.
it seems that I mean, it's not a must, when you're writing that you should have an open heart. But it's our practice in Zen, we're trying to open, because we're oftentimes so closed, right? Because
Right.
there's so many things going on, and, the fear about ourself that's trying to protect itself from what we don't know, is what we're trying to find out and see clearly. But anyway, that's a whole process there that goes together with a practice,
Yeah.
right, of contemplation, of just noticing what you're doing, which is really wonderful. So thank you for those. That image was just really beautiful for me.
Oh, thanks, June. Thank you. I think someone has a hand in the back.
Yeah, your story of being stuck really resonated with me. And my parents actually told me that I could major in whatever I wanted as long as I got the degree and started working. And not teaching. So that's the difference between Jewish parents and but I had turned it into a joke when I stopped writing. And it was, my wounds were self-inflicted. I joked that my muse died in a commercial baking accident, and that wrote. But in effect, what had happened was I had closed myself off to pursue the mythology of prosperity, okay? And it was only after I realized that I had followed decades worth of a false god that I found Zen, found Roshi Jun, and started opening up. And had this feeling yesterday. Aaron, my partner, and I were walking along the lake at Fort Sheridan in Highwood. And all of a sudden I said, I'm ready to start writing. I don't know what it's about yet, but being out in nature and being contemplative and seeing through the eyes I had stopped seeing through, your talk just resonated so beautifully. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm really honored. I mean, all those years in commercial banking probably didn't hurt you either. I think I used to really regret the decades of not writing where I felt I used to think was misguided ambition into academia. But I think that those years were also productive in a different way. And so I started to value them much later as instead of it being a waste. I think it um, gave me an experience of the desolation, which was going to motivate me later. I think being creatively desolated is also really instructive. It's hard to appreciate that kind of desolation because it feels dry, but it's also very helpful. I think it's we don't have to celebrate creative desolation, but I think it's a very instructive time where there's no creative output, but just that feeling of dryness. I think that that brings some wisdom into the later creativity because you know what it is you're trying to, the desert you're trying to populate. And I think that can be very powerful. So, commercial banking, it's okay.
I, I loved your moment by moment description of the morning.
Oh,
Because it just resonated with me. I've not ever living in a Buddhist temple, but having that moment, that early morning moment, and you're feeling a certain way, and then what you have to do all day crashes in, and then trying to overcome it, and the way that you found the space to do that because of
yeah.
this. I love that. And I'm so happy to hear you. I just started reworking myself through Artist Way
Oh, wow.
a couple weeks ago. Uh, and it's so instructive. And this time, having taken up a Zen practice 6 months ago, I'm now doing what you've been doing for years. I'm kind of like combining the two things of the practice plus the writing. Um, and all my life I had been made to feel ashamed because it was seen as selfish to be doing those kinds of things, creative.
Right,
You were supposed to take care of your sisters and brothers while your parents were working. You were supposed to take care of your in-laws when they were ill. You were supposed to take care of your parents when they were ill, and on and on and on. And so it was the shame of, oh, how can you take time for yourself to
right.
do, and so I've been successful at fending that off on and off, but I just feel like this is such, Cameron talks about serendipity.
Yeah.
And it feels serendipitous.
Oh, good, good. I think then you are in the right place. You came at the right time. Thank you. Yes.
Just a reflection and maybe a curious question. First of all, thank you. It's very moving and it's great to see that Zen has helped you in your career, whatever form. So it's a food for my cynical engineer mind. I was what the heck are you doing? Sitting here doing nothing. So it does help. So anyway, just the reflection part, the whole spontaneity thing, let it flow out. Just connecting the dots, a lot of these Buddhism, Zen, originating out of the Indian subcontinent, a lot of Eastern traditions share similar kind of roots. I couldn't help but reflect on Bhagavad Gita. It's a Hindu mythical book where there was a phrase or there was an exchange between a god and an incarnation and a warrior. So the warrior was asking, why do you have to kill my own friends, cousins? They are on the opposing side. Like, why do you make me do this? So the God says, it's your dharma, it's your duty. Do not worry about the outcome. Action, what matters. So it's more that enjoy that process. There is a duty, there's a dharma you have to do. Do not expect rewards. Do not worry about the outcome. So that's very similar to in the Zen philosophy, that spontaneity, the Zen Tathagata, suchness. So that's really great to see in action, application. Just a question, it's great that you're applying, the practice was helping you or is helping you in your writing. But during that time when you run into, still the thoughts won't go away, right? That monkey mind, so when you still during that process, when those thoughts come, even that very early morning routine where you start out great, feel good, words flowing out, still the thoughts still could come there. Right? Kind of what would you do? I'm just curious. How do you take a pause? Do you do sit with it? Like, just any tips during those times.
I want to toss this to June. Because that's the Zen teacher who should tell you. I just like everybody else. Some days I get on the rabbit wheel of karma and I just ride it. I'm just like everybody else. I don't have answers. I just have practice. So sometimes I'm writing and I just ride the wheel, the karmic wheel. Just ride it, ride it, ride it. I'm going to have all the ego thoughts. I'm going to feel terrible. I'm going to believe all of them and I won't write. Or maybe I notice all those karmic thoughts and I take a pause or I do hapjang and I breathe and I remember that the thoughts aren't real, that they're empty from the Heart Sutra, that they're empty. Sometimes the Heart Sutra is really helpful. The Heart Sutra, if you chant it a lot, is in your mind and it comes back and it tells you all dharmas are empty. It's all empty. So some of those phrases that you learn in the liturgies come when you need them. So sometimes they rescue me. Some of the chants will rescue me sometimes. Even the Sanskrit chants, a phrase from the Sanskrit chant might come to rescue me. It's kind of interesting if you've been doing it for a long time, how the practice can come rescue you when you're really foundering. It just comes. Sometimes it comes as like a prayer, help me, and then something comes because you want help. And so something from your memory comes, and you might remember part of the Heart Sutra, or you might remember one of the morning chants, and that. I think the temple training was helpful for that because I was steeped inside the practices every day that it became a part of my cellular life. So when I absorbed it into my cells, then it comes it comes on its own and I don't work so hard. But I live an ordinary life and when the karmic wheel starts turning, I just get on it and ride it like everybody else. So it
Thank
doesn't I don't have all the answers.
Lovely talk, Pearl. I really like hearing you talk about your creative process.
Oh, thanks, Robert. Nice to see you.
I was painting while you were talking. And I particularly like what you said about desolation and dry periods, because in my early years as a painter, I used to have really intense, I'd be working on a project for like 6 months. And then I would just stop, when I finished the project, I'd get depressed and I wouldn't paint for like months. And I would really be depressed, but it didn't feel like it was something bad that I was depressed. It felt like just kind of a natural process that I had finished something and something needed to percolate beneath my consciousness, and I kind of accepted that as part of that dryness as part of the creative process. And so now it's not as intense. I'm older. I haven't painted for a year, and I just started painting about a couple weeks ago. And what it felt like to me is like breathing.
Yeah.
But I can't. It's kind of mysterious, isn't it? I mean, what opens us up and what closes us down. But anyway, I love hearing you talk about your process, and I'm glad you're teaching a workshop on writing.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank
Yeah.
June's dreams, which is why I got here. Um, I think that dryness is actually, I want to credit Sunim, my teacher, who passed away a few years ago. He used to say about our practice, be careful about dryness. He talked about it as a warning in which when the meditation practice becomes dry, it doesn't have life in it, and you're just sort of mechanical. And so I used to worry about having a dry practice, one where you're doing your breath counting, but you're just sort of mechanical.
Yeah.
And I started to experience creative dryness where there wasn't a sense of energy. Just you're kind of mechanically doing exercises, but it's dry. And I felt I had a lot of judgment about that kind of dry period where it didn't feel that wonderful rush of creativity, that euphoria. It just was this thing. And I thought that was a mistake. But I'm starting to realize when Siddham was teaching dryness, he was telling us to notice it, but just notice it and not just notice and then just do the next thing. And I think that's one of the things about Zen training I like is that it's it's wonderfully undramatic. Like just notice and then do the next thing. Just notice and do the
I,
next thing.
I've seen people, well, I've gone through that dryness myself, and I've seen others, sitting for years without smiling,
Yeah.
without joy. But then they come through it. So dryness can be a stepping stone to something else if you just work with it.
Yeah, and I think the hard part is to be just there with it and not
Yeah.
push through it and not want it to end and not want it and to judge it and to hate it and all those emotions about it. I think that's the human part. That's the part where we want to be to some other place that feels better. And I think the dryness is part of the process, but it's hard, Robert, to kind of be accepting of all of this. I don't know if you struggle with that.
Yeah.
It's a practice, it is a practice.
I think that's why it's called a practice.
The uncomfortableness of it all. It's a good practice, really, even though uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Letting go of judgment, that's a big one.
Well, thank you.
Okay, well, we'll see you soon, Kunaka.
Thank you. I'll see you in 2 weeks at the center, and it's delight. And I just want to say, I haven't logged in online to the Sangha. I just want to say what a beautiful Sangha you have with like 15 people online and people in the room. I think that's really amazing. It's really wonderful that you're able to accomplish that after the pandemic, June and Robert. I think you should be quite proud.
It's everybody here. Yeah. Yes, it takes a village.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Kunaka.
Thank you. I'll see you in a few weeks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Great to
Thank
meet you.
Nice meeting you. Nice meeting the Antiochians.
Thank you, Paul.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.